Senator Carroll.
Here.
Senator Caslin. Senator Douglas.
Present.
Senator Givens.
Here.
Senator Kerr. Senator McGarvey.
Here.
Senator Meredith.
Present.
Senator Nemes.
Present.
Senator Webb. Senator West.
Here.
Representative Beckler.
Here.
Representative Bentley.
Here.
Representative Blanton.
Here.
Representative Bridges.
Here.
Representative Dossett.
Present.
Representative Fisher.
Here.
Representative Fleming.
Present.
Representative Flood. Representative Fugit.
Here.
Representative Gentry.
Here.
Representative Hale.
Here.
Representative Hart.
Here.
Representative Hatton.
Here.
Representative McCool.
Here.
Representative Nemes.
Here.
Representative Palumbo. Representative Prunty.
Here.
Representative Raymond.
Here.
Representative Reed.
Here.
Representative Riley. Representative Santoro. Representative Tipton. Representative Wellner.
Here.
Representative Petrie.
Here.
Chair McDaniel.
Here. Is everyone still hearing this echo? All right. The first thing I'm going to ask is if all the members would turn their microphones off, please. Is everybody still hearing an echo? No. All right. Oh, is the computer. I felt like a genius there for a second. Oh, well. That's the way it works. Okay. So, all right. We got 3 items on the agenda for today. But first of all, I'd like to recognize Hunter Branham, who's a new analyst. Hunter, where are you at? I don't know that we've met before. All right, there he is. Welcome, Hunter. And Lexi Bensberg, who is our new committee assistant. So welcome to both of you guys. Appreciate you being here. So first up is approval of the minutes from the July 6th meeting. Do I have a motion? To have a second? Senator Nemes, second by Dr. Douglas. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. Very well. Okay, so like I said, we do have 3 items on here today. We are going to adjourn this meeting no later than 2:35. So it'll be about a half of an hour per. So if you have extra questions, just know that I'm going to cut you off, and you are welcome to submit those in writing. We will pass them on to the appropriate delegations to be answered. But first up, Director Hicks, you're up, sir. And when you sit down, obviously, if you just identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Hicks. I'm a State Budget Director. Happy to be here for the second straight year to reveal some really good news for the Commonwealth's fiscal situation. I'm here today to talk about the year that ended, June 30th, 2022, fiscal year 22. And a lot of it's about the revenue story, similar to last year. But we're going to give you some details on the revenues for the General and Road Fund, where we finished the year in terms of the balance, the surplus, and some related information. Well, that didn't work. All right, first let me talk about fiscal 22 general fund revenues. We've got a table here that shows on the left-hand side what we actually received, and to the right-hand side what the budgeted estimate was. So we received $14.7 billion, which is $945.4 million more than the budgeted estimate for fiscal 22. So that's a very large number. 14.6% growth rate in fiscal 22. That's the highest growth rate in 31 years, and 31 years ago was fiscal 91, the first year after CARA and the tax increases, both income and sales at that time. So that one was an intentional increase in resources. This was the result of, what's going on in the economy and the impact it has on state revenues. And that's on top of last year's growth rate of 10.9. So over the last 2 years, we've had a 27% growth rate in general fund revenues. Excepting for the tax increase, that's unprecedented in modern times. some of the highlights there, individual income and sales and use tax is about 3/4 of our general fund revenues. Individual income tax rose, 17.6%, sales tax rose 11. It's an indication of what's going on in the underlying economy. We expect the August employment data to reveal that Kentucky has recovered all of its jobs to the pre-pandemic level. Nationally, we've just gotten there. Kentucky will have just arrived. So I'm going to talk about some of the more highlights there. Income taxes soared. Individual income tax grew 17.6%, the highest since that date I mentioned, 1991, when we had a tax increase. 2/3 of the revenue surplus was attributable to individual income tax receipts. Withholding, which I consider a real good bellwether of our fiscal health in Kentucky, grew 11%. The prior 7 years, it averaged growing 3.5%. That shows you how phenomenal fiscal 22 was for withholding. That's salaries and wages. Business taxes, the corporation income tax, the limited liability entity tax grew in a combined 34% over a record year last year, which I think was a 38% growth rate. So corporate profits, very high. In fact, the business taxes there totaled $1.2 billion, which is 8% of the total general fund, and that's kind of the highest share of the general fund that business taxes comprise since fiscal 2007. It's been averaging 4.3% annually as a share of the general fund since 2007. So going from 4.3% on average to 8% share of the general fund is very notable. Sales taxes continue to outperform. It grew 11% over last year's 12%. To give you a little context, the 15-year average prior to that's 4%. So again, we're outstripping history in two areas that are truly based upon the health of the economy: states tax income and consumption primarily, and those two things have been going well. Here's a table that shows kind of on a quarter-by-quarter basis for the general fund what the revenue growth. So 3-month period at a time. You can see high numbers in all 4 quarters. 20% in the first quarter, 17% in the last quarter. Pretty consistent, in terms of throughout the year. We have seasonality in our tax system, our tax receipts, particularly on the individual income tax when it comes in April. And the estimated tax payments every quarter. So we have that. Sales taxes are fairly consistent across the year, except for February, where we have the annual filers come in, and suddenly February is a very big month. But other than that, it's been a consistent growth rate throughout the fiscal year. So the result, sorry, I've got a very, there we go. The result is a surplus in the general fund, $1 billion. This is the second year in a row we've had a $1 billion surplus. Prior to that, our highest surplus in a fiscal year was fiscal 98, when we had some good budgets of $366 million. So again, 2 straight years of $1 billion surplus. And in every budget bill you all enact, you put in a general fund surplus expenditure plan. So what do you do with a surplus? Really 2 things. We can set aside a reserve for what we call necessary government expenses. These are things like calling out the National Guard, dealing with disasters, prison population greater than budgeted, things of that nature. So we set aside $20 million, and that was before the flood, and deposit the rest into our rainy day fund, the Budget Reserve Trust Fund. So $1,013.5 million deposited in our rainy day fund. So that leaves our rainy day fund at a balance of $2.7 billion. Words I would have never guessed that I would express in my career. That deposit of $1 billion was on top of a $1.1 billion deposit last year. So in the last 2 years, a great portion of the $2.7 billion has come from 2 years of general fund surpluses, revenue surpluses. That equates to about 19.5 of fiscal 23's general fund appropriations. One measure of sufficiency, adequacy of a rainy day fund is, well, what share of your spending do you have in savings? And so that's a very high number. In fiscal 19, Kentucky ranked 46th in the country in that ratio. So budget reserve trust fund or rainy day fund as a percent of spending. Before this surplus, the $1 billion we just added, we rose up to the U.S. median. So about, we went from 46 to like 27. Don't know where this one will come because our fellow states are yielding the same kind of revenue surpluses that Kentucky is. It's very common across the states. And so in any case, hooray that we've got a rainy day fund, of that size and of that ratio. It's something we've all concerned ourselves about for years about, do we have enough and adequate reserve?
Hey, John, I'm going to ask you to hold 1 second.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's something else going on in the background for audio. Is anybody else hearing this? Everybody check your cell phones and look and see if you started something here, because it's really distracting from the director's testimony. If not, we might have an audio issue of our own, but it sounded like something totally different. All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Sure. So in any case, we've blown way past the question of adequacy of a rainy day fund, but that's a good thing to have. Let me move to the road fund. Our road fund is about $1.7 billion. The actuals came in just right on target. We were less than 0.3% off of the estimate. It was $4.7 million, but that is an extremely accurate estimate. We grew 2% in fiscal 22 on road funds. And I'll talk about the two primary sources of the road fund, the motor fuels tax, the gas tax, and the motor vehicle usage tax, or the sales tax on vehicles. You can see there's some. You can see some different percentages in some of the lower dollar estimates that are exaggerated by their low levels. But one of the things that we've had some pluses and minuses, and I'll talk about that. In the sense that our motor fuels tax was a little under the estimate, and our motor vehicle usage tax was over the estimate. And here's a quarterly growth rate chart that shows how did we fare as we move through the fiscal year. And you see that final fourth quarter as being a negative 2.6. That was compared to fourth quarter of last year where we had a 44% increase. So it was understandable that we had a fourth quarter drop compared to fourth quarter of last year, because we had that huge surge. That was when, in essence, people were going back to driving on the roads, and that the cars and vehicle sales were going through the roof. So overall, fairly steady situation in the road fund throughout the year. I'm going to let somebody else do this next time. So the road fund summary, as I said, revenues came in very close. That motor vehicle usage tax receipt in fiscal 22 was a record, $629 million, beat last year's record of $620 million. And before fiscal 21, the highest motor vehicle usage tax annual amount was $514. So, a really good year in terms of that revenue source. Motor fuels grew 3.5%, and of course that's between motor fuels and the motor vehicle usage. That's 84% of the road fund. So our road fund goes as those two taxes go. So the surplus, $70 million surplus. Well, why did we have a $70 million surplus when revenues were down about $4.7 million? Well, the answer is you didn't budget all the estimated revenues. So in essence, you budgeted a surplus in fiscal 22 for the road fund, about $49 million of that. And then a few other items in there with the small revenue shortfall caused a $70 million road fund surplus at the end of fiscal 22. And in the road fund surplus expenditure plan, it goes to one place. It goes to the highways budget unit for the biennial highway construction program. So we've already added $70 million to the state construction account that is used to finance, the biennial highway construction program. So a positive result there. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very well. I'm sure we'll have some off of the committee here. Okay, we'll start with Representative Nemes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director Hicks. Good to see you today. This is a very good report. It's good to hear another good report. I wanted to make sure I heard something correctly, and that is that our tax receipts from businesses were up. I didn't catch the percentage, but they were up higher than they've been since 2007. Is that right?
Yeah, 34% this year, over 38% increase of last year.
Okay, and so and our income taxes from personal income taxes, obviously, which is up 17.6%. It's the highest since 1991.
Right.
So I wanted to highlight that in 2018 we reduced the business taxes by 16% from 6% to 5%, and we reduced the income taxes by 14% from 5.6% to 5%, and we've just reduced the income tax again on working families from 5% to 4.5% with an effort to go down lower. And so one of the criticisms when we did that was you're going to rob the Treasury of resources. And so our response was, no, this will incentivize growth. Now, we've had some things in the interim, COVID and so forth, but that doesn't explain the highest highest receipts from business income taxes since 2007 and the highest receipts of income taxes since 1991. So I guess I want to highlight that and say that I think, thank goodness we're on the right policy, the right aim there, and then ask you to comment on that if you might.
Sure. No, I would say as I look across the country, we're seeing similar results in states that raised income taxes, that lowered income taxes, states that didn't change their income taxes. You know, what we're seeing here is, you know, very, very low unemployment rate. Pressure on wages, no question about that. As wages go up, income taxes go up. It's that simple. Corporate profits, record levels, no question about that. As profits go up, business taxes, receipts go up. So it's really the underlying economy across the nation, that we're revealing. And as you said, coming out of the pandemic's, big drop we had in the spring of 2020, where we lost all those jobs, and then our really slingshot back, quickly in terms of employment. And we saw the effects on sales taxes across the country. We went heavily toward goods. We've been trending services for years and years, and suddenly, because of the pandemic, we a lot of goods, and we're moving back to the services, particularly in leisure hospitality. But the circumstances were kind of post-COVID, combined with other great economic conditions. Very difficult, and I understand your point. Very difficult to kind of untie. How do you disaggregate how much of that effect is due to this policy change versus other underlying economic conditions? But we'll take the results.
Representative Tipton.
Thank you. I'll make one brief comment that kind of follows along with Representative Nemes. It seems to me, maybe I'm just a novice at this, but the impact of inflation certainly has to impact our sales tax revenue. As people are having to pay more for goods and services, they're paying more sales tax. So I can see that. I think the main thing we need to remember with these numbers, it's very difficult to look at a set of numbers at one point in history and make decisions. We're going to have to look at the long term, the next 2 or 3 years, and see what this trend continues. My specific question is in regard to the lottery revenues being $29 million under projected. Those revenues play a very vital role in providing scholarships and grants. I guess I want to get your perspective and concerns about that. Is this a short-term situation, or do you see this rebounding and getting these revenues back up?
Yeah, thank you, Representative, for the question. I call it the lottery strangeness here. We got more money than we showed you here. The reason was that the General Assembly capped the amount of lottery receipts that would go into the general fund and putting in about 24 million, almost the exact difference between the estimate, into a trust and agency fund, to be future appropriated a little. You appropriated a little bit of it, in the biennial budget we're in right now. So the real answer is the lottery was doing very well. And this was an updated estimate, from December, and when the Lottery Corporation, who we work with closely when we do the forecast for that estimate, and they came in on target. So it really doesn't reveal the health of the lottery or the concern over it, even with the advent of more positions of historical horse racing and other elements of the use of entertainment dollars. The lottery is doing great. And so thank you for pointing out that this really isn't evidence of the lottery's issue because of the way you decided to dispose of the funds. And I would agree with you on your inflation affecting the sales tax, no question. Thank goodness Kentucky doesn't tax groceries, and pharmaceuticals. Number of states who have started to move away from that because of the revenue surpluses we're seeing today.
All right, last one to Representative Bland.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Director Hicks, thank you. It's always good to see you, but it's even better to see you when you bring good news, right? Just for clarification, and this might be somewhat outside of your realm, but you mentioned the unemployment rate, and we're soon going to be back down to pre-COVID levels with the unemployment rate, or at least that's the direction that we seem to be headed. And so I get what you're saying, but I scratch my head a little bit when I see all of my constituents that are business owners that can't find employees. And there is a number of people that were in the workforce pre-COVID. They drew out unemployment to the max that they could, and they've not entered it back in to those actual numbers as considered unemployed now. So percentage of unemployment versus actual number of people working today versus 3 years ago. Do we have an actual number of people that's actually working today versus pre-COVID? Throw out the percentages because those are can be somewhat skewed. But do we actually have as many people in the workforce today as we did 3 years ago?
And the answer is yes, we do. It's almost 1,947,000, something like that. Because I'd asked this question recently. I said, when are we back to the pre-pandemic level? And we're just now getting there. So, so in total employment, we're back in a little above.
Very good. And I just wanted clarification between the two so we know that we are back up with our actual numbers.
Yep.
Thank you.
Very well. Director, as always, thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Chairman.
you. All right, next up, we've got University of Louisville here to talk about the Kentucky Cyber Security Center. If you guys would like to go ahead and come on up, identify yourselves for the record, and proceed.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Kevin Gardner. I'm the Executive Vice President for Research and Innovation at the University of Louisville. It's a pleasure to be here. Rick?
Sir, I'm Rick Halbleib. My background, I served 24 years active duty in the Army as an intelligence officer and retired as a colonel, and then transitioned to federal senior executive service with the Department of Defense and the intelligence community and served 20 years with the NSA. I recently retired and moved to Kentucky.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Sharon Carrick. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Digital Transformation Center at the University of Louisville.
Thank you. I'm Andrew Wright. I'm an assistant professor and new chair of the Information Systems Analytics and Operations Department in the College of Business at the University of Louisville.
We have one online guest as well, Dr. Michael Schaefer from Augusta University. He's going to be joining us and giving part of the presentation today. So thank you for having us here to talk about cybersecurity. This is a global issue, as you see on the screen here. This was taken this morning, where there was 12.5 million attacks so far at 9 o'clock this morning. You can pull one of these up anytime you like to see where these attacks are going on, but it affects all the businesses in the state of Kentucky. It affects the state agencies in the state of Kentucky, and it affects critical infrastructure that we rely on every day in the state of Kentucky. So we're going to talk to you about the proposed Kentucky Cyber Security Center at the University of Louisville. So to start off with, cybersecurity is a huge and growing threat. I think we looked up some numbers on the way over here. It costs the world global economy in the tens of trillions of dollars last year, and it's something like a 60% increase year over year in cybersecurity attacks and criminal activity. The average cost of critical infrastructure data breach, as you see here, is close to $5 million. And there is a dearth of workforce to help us with this problem. So in the state of Kentucky, there are currently, as when we wrote this proposal, about 4,000 jobs unfilled in the cybersecurity area, 3 million across the country. This is not a problem the University of Louisville can handle or can manage. What we're proposing to you is that we'll take a lead on developing a statewide consortium that includes the educational institutions across the state, private sector across the state, state agencies, and so forth to address this problem. We have a vision for this center. The vision is that Kentucky's critical infrastructure, that's water treatment, electric supply, and so forth, state and local agencies and major economic sectors to include healthcare, manufacturing, will thrive in a secure cyber infrastructure that's built by our own skilled workforce. And our mission is to accelerate the adoption of cybersecurity systems in the state by combining the assets that higher education has, state and federal agencies, and private sector companies, and do this in an innovation park. And we'll hear about the effort that the state of Georgia has made along the same lines. There are three major parts to this cybersecurity center we're proposing. You'll see in the top right, the first one, education and workforce development. As I said, there's a critical shortage of people that are skilled and prepared to work in this field, and we need to worry about pre-kindergarten through 12 pipeline. We need to worry about industry certificate programs so that they've got the stamp of approval from the industry folks for being able to do work in this space. And so there's work at every level for people coming into this field and that are needed in this field. The second thing on the bottom right, you'll see dedicated cyber ranges and incident response. This is a critical need. Like if you have an armed force and they've never shot their guns on a range before, you don't want to take them into battle. And so the cyber range is the same kind of thing, but it's for cyber systems. So it's for the interconnected network of things that exist in any kind of economy, whether it's voting systems or it's healthcare industry. So those cyber ranges are a really critical part of the infrastructure that state needs in order to be responsive and to be prepared and safe and secure. And then the last thing is a collaborative innovation ecosystem. And so we're proposing that we have the physical space with the cyber infrastructure that go along with that houses private sector companies, state agencies, federal agencies. These are crime units. They're chief information security officers, along with academic experts from around the state. This is a proposal that we've got. This is the research park that's adjacent. At the bottom part of the screen there is the J.B. Speed School of Engineering at the University of Louisville. On the upper part of that graphic, those are proposed sites for buildings in this research park. So this is just off I-65, and this is a place where the University Foundation can donate this land to build this physical space where this innovation has to happen. And in particular, when you're talking about certain types of cyber infrastructure like these SCIFs, it has to have a physical space. It can't just exist in cyberspace. I'm going to turn one more slide for me. Why University of Louisville? So University of Louisville is accredited as a center for academic excellence in cybersecurity, and that's a designation by Department of Homeland Security and national security agencies. And we're a R1 university as well on top of that. So we've got, and you'll hear about some of the work that we've been doing in cybersecurity in education and training and research a little bit later on in the talk from the cybersecurity experts that we have here. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Rick Halbleb, who's really helped to position the university and to connect us with the other partners that we'll hear about today from Georgia. Rick?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairman, committee members. I'll be brief and only make 4 points that address the urgency and importance of establishing a Kentucky Cybersecurity Center. When you turn the TV on, there's no shortage of national crises. The border, government spending, tax increases, inflation, gas
Rick,
prices.
forgive me for 1 second. Would you care to move your microphone a little closer,
Closer?
please? Yes, sir. And is your green button on?
It is.
Yes, sir. All right, yeah, if you'll just move it a little closer. Thank you, sir.
Got it. Crime, law enforcement, foreign policy. The list goes on, but I would argue our greatest national crisis is cybersecurity. However, it's seldom discussed and understood by people, the media, and many in government. Yet all of America operates in cyberspace with smartphones, smart TVs, smart cars, smart houses. It's the Internet of Things, and all functions are connected. Imagine a cyber attack on the U.S. critical infrastructure that zeroes out or denies you access to your checking account, your savings account, your investment accounts. How would you provide for your family, pay your bills, make purchases? How would retirees survive? How could you recoup this financial loss? A cyber attack could shut down power grids, depriving us of electricity, gas, water, fuel. That means no air conditioning, refrigeration, lights, TV, computers, phones, drinking water, limited health care. America would riot and implode. Point 2. The RSA Conference is a series of information technology security conferences. The last one was held in June of 22 in San Francisco. It's the Super Bowl, it's the World Series of security professionals dealing with cyber operations. 44,000 people, hundreds of companies attend. Senior U.S. government officials were there and warned that we are on high alert for potential cybercrime and attacks as a consequence of the war in the Ukraine. They're not just kinetic attacks that's going on in the Ukraine, like you see on TV, but large amounts of cyber attacks. Chris Inglis, he's our national cyber director and former NSA senior executive. He warned the public that Russia poses a credible threat to public infrastructure. Jen Easterly, she's the DHS Director of Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, and she is also a former NSA senior executive. And she warned of potential cyber attacks against our critical infrastructure. Rob Joyce is the NSA Cybersecurity Director. He said that current cyber advisories by NSA and CISA are an expression of confidence that attacks on the U.S. are actively planned with only the timing of their execution in question. We are only as strong as our weakest link, and cyber attack is cheap, fast, and destructive. And you don't need to spend millions of dollars on weapon systems. For those of us who are old enough to remember, on 18 November 1956, the NBC Nightly News Huntley Brinkley report noted in the USSR leader Nikita Khrushchev's speech, his quote, "We will take America without firing a shot. We do not have to invade the U.S. We will bury you from within." Today, President Putin is implementing that threat. Point 3, America's unprepared. We have over 700,000 cybersecurity job vacancies in the U.S. today because our workforce is not adequately trained and educated. According to the cybersecurity company PurpleSec, the education industry is ranked last in cybersecurity preparedness out of 17 major industries. Additionally, 79% of universities have experienced damage to reputation, and almost 74% have had to halt valuable research projects because of cyber attack. Kentucky has over 50 colleges and universities, but only 6 centers of academic excellence accredited by NSA and DHS. And U of L is the largest and only R1 research institution in this state that is accredited. Elementary, middle, and high schools are not preparing a generation of cyber athletes to confront this challenge. And we have national programs that we need to adopt and get in our schools. Most of our industry, academic, and government institutions are not prepared to adequately respond to a cyber attack. And finally, point 4, this is a call for action. Kentucky should establish a cybersecurity center like Georgia did to bring together the combined talents of academia, industry, and government to address this crisis and prepare Kentucky to respond to a cyber attack. My question is, what is the plan for the governor? What is the plan for the legislature? We think this very important initiative is part of the solution to the plan that you're contemplating. And I thank you for the time to speak today.
Thank you, Rick. So we're going to turn it over to Dr. Michael Schaefer from Augusta University, who's on Zoom, and he's going to talk to you about the Georgia Cyber Center, and they're a few years into their experience. So, Michael?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to provide you with information on the financial model of the Georgia Cyber Innovation and Training Center. I'm going to read my remarks simply to make sure I stay within my time, and then I'll be open for questions afterwards. So first slide, please. So in 2017, Governor Nathan Deal announced the creation and funding of the first of 2 buildings that make up the Georgia Cyber Center. By January of 2019, both buildings had been constructed and open for business. Next slide, please. The total investment of the Georgia Cyber Center is $122 million. $106 million is from the state of Georgia for the project. When then asked the city of Augusta to provide $16 million for the construction of the parking deck so that we could spend the state dollars on the project itself. As a partner, the city will collect revenue from the parking deck for 5 years, and then the ownership of the deck refers back to Augusta University to make the project whole. So what is the mission? The mission of the Georgia Cyber Center is to cultivate an ecosystem where the combined talents of government, academia, and private industry will deliver affordable and relevant cybersecurity training and education, develop the state's cybersecurity workforce, solve complex cybersecurity challenges, and offer unbiased advice to policymakers in order to provide our state and the nation with a decisive advantage in cyberspace. The secret to the success of the Georgia Cyber Center is the collaboration under one roof of government, academia, and industry partners. But what about our budget? We promised the state if they funded the construction of the buildings and provided us with the initial funding for personnel and operations, that until we could fill the campus with the appropriate resident partners, we would then forego any future operational dollars, and we would provide the future refresh of these facilities. It was important for us to have enough time to populate the campus with the right mixture of the right resident partners. Next slide, please. So what makes up our budget? It is a mixture of both state appropriations and other additional resources. Our total state allocation for FY23 is just under $5.5 million. Our operations funding is just over $2.2 million, and our personnel funding is just over $3.2 million. Next slide, please. Our other revenue is earned revenue. For FY23, we have budgeted just over $5.2 million, of which the majority is from our lease revenue. The other sources are from our cyber range services, our training, and other events. You will see an additional bar showing carry forward, which are our savings. If you will recall, I mentioned that we would not ask for additional funding allocations in the future for operations or funding to maintain the refresh of these facilities. It is these savings that allow us to fund our refresh plans. Next slide, please. The Georgia Cyber Center's business plan was developed as a self-sustaining model, utilizing our reserves to fund operational expenditures and to minimize appropriated operational budget allocations. During the first year of our opening, we hired an outside consultant to review the facilities and provide us with a 20-year roadmap of cost to maintaining these facilities. At the end of the 20-year refresh plan, $32 million will have been spent on continually maintaining and refreshing these facilities. That requires us to save an additional $1.6 million each year. Our second area requires savings is for our information technology and our audiovisual plan. This plan is for 10 years and was developed in-house by our IT professionals. At the end of the IT refresh plan, $7.6 million will have been spent on upgrading and keeping our technology current. This requires an additional $900,000 per year in total savings of $2.5 million a year over our operational budget. Most of our earned revenue currently is from lease payments from our resident partners. So who are the payers of the lease payments? Next slide, please. Again, the secret to our success and our mission is the collaboration between government, academia, and industry. And it is important that we have a balanced mix of these three. As you can see from the pie chart on the left, we have been very deliberate in who our partners are on our campus. The most important chart is the one on the right. This pie chart shows who is paying for the ongoing operational cost and the ongoing upkeep of our facilities. While academia makes up 26% of the facilities, they pay just 7% of the cost. We receive on average $5.31 per square foot. Next is government, which is a mixture of both state and federal partners. While they make up approximately 37% of the space, they also pay about 37% of the cost. Their average lease payment is around $25 per square foot. And finally is our industry partners. Our industry partners take up 37% of the space, but they make up 60% of the revenue we receive from leases. Their average cost is around $33.50 a square foot. We're very open with these partners that, number one, we need them for their ability to help us train our workforce and help us solve our complex cybersecurity challenges. But we also need them for their lease payments. This is a very brief yet high-level look at our model, and I'll be glad to look forward to answering any of your more questions at the end. Thank you.
Michael, I have one quick one. Obviously, you're there in Augusta. Do you interact with Fort Gordon at all in the Signal School and such there?
Yes, sir. Very much so. So, Army Cyber moved to Georgia. It was announced in 2013, and they ultimately finally moved what they call moved the flag last year. I believe it was in 2021. So we do interact. In fact, Army Cyber has a presence in the Georgia Cyber Center. But we interact both with NSA Georgia, with Army Cyber, and the Army Cyber Center of Excellence.
Very good. Thank you.
And we've met with Fort Knox for the same reason, which they don't have the same cyber presence, but they have important elements there at Fort Knox for sure. So I'm going to turn it over to Sharon and then Andrew to talk about some of the experience that U of L has in this realm.
So first off, we've created a 6-month certificate. Doesn't mean that you have to have a college degree to do it. We were awarded $8.3 million from the National Security Agency. The first award was $6 million, but they had such confidence in what we were producing for curriculum that had hands-on virtual instructor-led success coaches that then they awarded us another $2.3 million to make the $8.3 million. What we're doing right now for curriculum that's used across the country. When we put forth the proposal to NSA in 2020, what we did is built a consortium of schools here in Kentucky. And so within that consortium, we not only have KCTCS and the two schools, Owensboro and Bluegrass, that have NAECs and cybersecurity experts, as well as we have now added Kentucky State University as well as Simmons College. And then you'll see on the next slide, we have partners in our coalition from East Coast to West Coast so that we can leverage the advanced knowledge that each of them bring to the table for us. And across the top of the screen, you see each one of those emblems. And Dr. Wright's going to explain what we put together as far as those badges and certificates and things like that. But I just want to mention that we've been very successful in this collaboration effort, and even so much to the point that when these awards were given by the NSA, they only did 3 universities in the country, and we were one of the 3. And ours was because we were able to demonstrate that we could collaborate and share how we work together, and again leverage the intellect across the board. And that's been very successful. And now the other 2 schools that were approached that have their own coalitions, we are now working on a super coalition whereby we can utilize, again, expertise, train the trainer, not just introductory level cyber, advanced level cyber, but also enabling and arming all the other universities and educators across the country.
Thank you, Dr. Carrick. Dr. Carrick is the principal investigator. I'm co-principal investigator on that grant as well. She's too modest. The curriculum was created at the request of the National Centers of Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity. All of the schools that were participants in the initial round were designated as Centers of Academic Excellence in cyber defense themselves. The curriculum request from the National Security Agency asked us to specify an industry area of focus initially, and healthcare was ours. That is obviously a hugely important part of our economy, certainly regionally, but nationally as well. The third year that Sharon discussed is moving us into a new industry focus area, logistics and distribution. Again, no surprise with our regional presence with UPS and the Logistics and Distribution Institute at the University of Louisville that this would be an area we would focus on. The request also included development of cutting-edge modules, which are not traditionally part of an undergraduate or graduate cybersecurity education. So these included development of modules in artificial intelligence, cognitive computing, data mining, even post-quantum cryptography, how we're going to handle the world of cryptography post-quantum supremacy. These are areas that are unusual in a traditional cybersecurity program, but is the direction that the world is headed. Artificial intelligence will continue to play a greater role as we move forward with cyber defense. We divided it across 3 levels, and so we have some others that we have experience with as well. On the left side, the C4 project that Dr. Jeff Sun from the College of Education and Human Development produced, which was focused on certification. So these are industry certifications like CompTIA Security Plus and whatnot. This was funded by $2 million from the Department of Defense, which was routed through the Kentucky Commission on Military Affairs here in the state. So that came through the state. Another project, this one funded through the Department of Homeland Security, focused on taking the curriculum that we developed in the grant previously mentioned and adapting it for law enforcement. And that has been led by someone from our criminal justice program. And the third one is another from the NSA-DHS combination, which is focused on preparing the next generation of cyber defenders through high school training. So we have our first cohort starting this summer with high school instructors, helping them understand how they can deliver this training to their students in high school.
I just want to mention one other thing on the curriculum. We're also embedding Google certificates, IBM certificates, Microsoft certificates, so that if somebody doesn't go in one track of cybersecurity, they at least have some other upskill, reskill from that perspective. And we were just awarded some monies from Humana to do free classes, free introductory classes in cyber analytics and artificial intelligence, so that our population in Kentucky could be moving forward. And we're often asked all over the country. We've presented a lot of papers this year. We've done 4 or 5 across the country about how we're doing this and what we're doing in Kentucky and how we're moving it forward. Thank you.
Gotcha. Guys, if you could just kind of advance to what your request of the
Yep.
Commonwealth would be, and I'm going to explain why. With your out-of-town guests here, I want to make sure we get the opportunity to ask them questions, and I have no doubt we're going to have more conversation with University of Louisville directly about this,
Yep.
and in committees as well, but I want to make sure we've got some time for
Yep. So just real quick, this is our first year budget request. It's $1 million. I realize it was, since Mr. Hicks is still in here, it should have been $945 million, but it's only $1 million. But this is mainly for personnel that are experts in this space, and the cyber range hardware and software that is really needed by critical infrastructure in the state, and it's really needed now. And then in FY24, we have a larger ask, and this is really in preparation for this building, the design of the building and beginning of site work so that we can, in FY25, construct this building that has the cyber infrastructure and so forth in it. And that is the end of our presentation. Happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Very good. Before we get to it, I'm just going to tell you now, the next time that we talk in the next couple of months here from Louisville, I want to understand how you're going to plug into the bigger infrastructure of all this, because this is just, it's a huge issue. And the good news for Kentucky is we're only 20 years behind on the deal. So, I mean, versus our normal 30. But nonetheless, we can't go out there in some kind of a quixotic quest. We need to be plugged into the overall national effort, and want to make sure that we understand how we're going to do that appropriately. All right.
Yep.
For the members of the committee, just briefly, a quick recommendation from me. There's a really great book on kind of some of the international dynamics to this called 3 Dangerous Men by a fellow named Seth Jones. If you have a chance, I would highly encourage you to pull and read that book. Because if there's one thing that cyber can do, it can take the battlefield from a foreign shore to your living room in the speed of light. And we all need to realize that at this point. So that's my only admonishment. And with that, Senator Carroll, I think you had the first question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for the presentation. Quickly, cyber insurance is going sky high from a business perspective. How will this impact insurance for government entities that are tied into this, for the university, for other entities?
That's a great question. I don't have an answer for that question right now. I think it's imperative that businesses and agencies and entities are as protected as it can be. So I don't know if anybody else has an answer, but we can certainly research that and get back to you. It's a great question.
All right. Next up, we had Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Anything higher education gets my radar screen up. Have you all had any collaborations with the Council on Post-Secondary Education on this, on how it would be implemented and how you coordinate with other post-secondary institutions across the state?
Do you want to take that, Sharon?
We have, and that's actually how we did the Kentucky State University as well, and we're training their instructors or professors so that they can roll out the curriculum in that fashion as well. Did I answer your question?
You did. I appreciate that, and that's very important. This is something that needs to go statewide.
Absolutely.
And I am, and you may not understand how we budget here. We have your base funding, we have performance-based funding. I'm assuming this, if we approve this, would be like a mandated program type of situation. I know U of L has, I think, the Autistic Center now.
Yep.
Other universities have specific mandated programs. Western has the Messinet program.
Yep.
So I'm assuming that's how the funding would come, as a mandated program outside of performance-based funding.
I assume so, but you guys are the experts on that.
Okay, very good. But I appreciate that. Look forward to learning more about this. Recently had a Lyft driver that just completed his 4th certificate in cyber security. I like to talk to him. So when I was at NCSL. So this is a very timely topic, and appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Very well, Senator Gibbons.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and thanks for the presentation. And obviously from the presentation, it's evident that we've got a workforce shortage in this space. And so think about this room as being full of ambassadors for us to carry your message out in our rural communities and across the Commonwealth, urban centers as well, to talk to students, families, potential workforce participants in this space. We need you to help us bridge that message just a little, though, because I heard Dr. Wright, and I wrote this down, Dr. Wright, because this is a fascinating statement. I'm here behind the post. How to handle the world of cryptography in the period of post-quantum supremacy. You're going to have to help us bridge from where you are and where we are and where our citizens are. What do we talk to constituents about as it relates to this presentation, and how do we convey the message?
Thank you for that. I was warned not to talk technically, and I made the mistake of throwing in a few buzzwords. My apologies. I think in simple terms, the need is at every level. The workforce needs include people that are coming out of high school that have skills that they can immediately offer with some upskilling and training. We have need for people with associate's degrees. We have need for people with bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and PhDs. The workforce need is tremendous, and there are plenty of opportunities for people at every level to contribute in this space. That particular one would require perhaps a higher level.
Well, not a higher level, but I'm going to take it to a different level that really when we talk to everyone, just the regular feet on the streets, the people at all level, the secretary, in the office and so on and so forth, it's critical that they at least have an alertness, even at an introductory level, of what might be going on with their computer and so on and so forth, just from screens that they're seeing or different things that they need to alert. And that's where this free training that we just got this award from Humana to do is really more for everyone in the population. We also are looking into more research about embedding things into actually the hardware that can, screen things before it actually boots up, from that time period. But back to the feet on the street, really we can slice it, dice it down to a simple level. We're even build a chat bots so that people are doing artificial intelligence even in the 5th grade. We've been doing that throughout the schools free so that they can learn how to build those things but also have awareness. Thank you.
And if I can just add real quickly, part of our more detailed proposal has working with K-12 and how do we prepare students in that pipeline to have these follow-on career options right out of high school with some certificate training, right out of high school into a 2-year degree, right? All these different options are important, and part of our work involves our College of Education and their work with the state on that exact subject.
Very well, and thank you. And lastly, to your champion on the issue, last question will be from Senator Nemes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a couple comments and then 2 questions. As you alluded to, on a national scale, this is a center. This isn't for U of L. This is a center, Kentucky center, and it's a regional. Same as Georgia. It's Georgia regional center, and we went to Pensacola, and it's a regional center, and there happen to be 2 military bases right there, and they're very much involved, as will Fort Knox and hopefully Fort Campbell. And workforce, I'm all for workforce. This is 6-digit careers right off the bat. And this is like in eastern Kentucky where you can't hardly put in a nice facility. They can work from home or have a small center that you can work anywhere in the cyber. So this is a business and industry attraction. It's needed. The insurance, like Senator Carroll was talking about, is going. We heard this morning in the 9 o'clock meeting about how the insurance is going way up. Virginia, when we were at NSCL, Virginia's whole system went down. The whole system in the state went down. And they decided not to pay the ransom. And because they had good backup, distant backup, they were able to get back up, and they had a cyber security company on retainer. Can you imagine not having any retainer or anybody, and a system goes down more than just yours? You're just waiting to try to get on board with someone that can help you. This center in Kentucky will not only be for the state, but the businesses that get involved with the center, as in Georgia. If something goes down, you're already there. You already have help, if not avoided the problem in the first place. So this is a fantastic industry and business. Now let's talk about workforce, which you did. I've got a grandson I'm trying to get into this. He's hopefully we'll still get him into it. He went off to college to play baseball. So because you come out making really good money. And the one question I have for you all, and then one question for Michael. Let's start with Michael. Yours is an easy one. Can you tell me the difference in the lease between the Fed and the state on the lease funding, the breakdown on that?
Yes, sir. I'll give you a little more, just so you know. Their educational rate of $5.31, of course, state of Georgia does a funding model for higher education. So that's where that rate originates from. So for the feds, it's going to be typically the Corps of Engineers or GSA who's going to negotiate that rate, right? They've got what the market is. And so we knew what we would be getting from them, but the importance was to have our federal partners as part of the Georgia Cyber Center, right? So we do have 2 federal agencies. We have the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy. So they're around $25 a square foot. For our industry partners, now for the state partners, when the Cyber Center was created, we went ahead and loaded into the budget. These are my terms. So I was in the governor's office in Georgia. We loaded so that we have 2 state partners that are in the building. One is GBI, which is our state
Let me
police
cut you off
force.
here because Chairman McDaniels always starts on time. I was just wanting to make the point that the feds come in with plenty of money, but so we here can say, okay, the state doesn't have to put up as much because the feds are going to help us
Yes. And they attract the industry partners as
All right.
well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And then for you all, you alluded to both of these things. Is I want to know what you're going to do for the universities real quickly, especially the 5 other ones that have the top line. And we already talked about why at U of L, how you're going to help them, because the other universities, the University of Cumberland, they're willing to put it in their place too. Yep. So, and then you alluded to how we're helping and already helping with the grants K through 12, which is tremendous. Can you expand on that?
Sharon, can you talk about the kind of partnerships you have now and how we can expand on those?
Yeah, so as we've moved forward with the NSA, and again, even other partners outside the state have brought us into their grants. So that's even new money that we weren't even expecting because of our expertise. But back to Cumberland and or Northern Kentucky University has a great technology. You see, there's such a slim amount of high-level expertise. We really do need each other in a lot of different ways. And so cross-pollinating, cross-training, and even utilizing a central pool of instructors for different levels. You get to see that slide that had 24 modules. And then when we start talking about some of these higher advanced ones, wouldn't it be great if we had, those resources at all the universities that we could pull from this one, pull from that one to teach this particular module or that particular module, and it shares the responsibility as well as the wealth, if you will, or the revenue generation for the organizations and their communities.
Did that answer your question? Yes, great. Thank you.
Anybody else on the committee have any panel have anything? For our friends from the University of Louisville, thank you for being here. I do expect to be back over the next several months here talking about this some more. And for the committee, I just want you to think about a couple of things, please, because every other issue that we address in this General Assembly normally affects a constituent group, a small slice of Kentucky. That's largely what we deal with. This affects every single person in the Commonwealth. And unfortunately, it's not like a lot of this is not the fun, offensive type of stuff. You get to go out and design things for Amazon. This is a lot of defensive stuff, and there's a lot of people who have ill will. And if you just stop and think about what all's connected to the internet in Kentucky, it's everything except voting machines. Thought I'd get a chuckle out of that one at least. But think about your water, your power, your electricity, your healthcare systems, on and on and on. And every one of those has some impact every single day. And this is a big deal. So thank you to Senator Nemes for bird dogging this up front. Thank you to you guys all for your work on it, both nationally, Georgia, and in our state. And we'll look forward to hearing more from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right, Jennifer, last but most certainly not least.
Jennifer Hayes, I'm Committee Staff Administrator for the Appropriations and Revenue Committee. And we are continuing today a discussion that we started in Northern Kentucky at the June meeting. At that meeting, we discussed the individual income tax reduction conditions, what they were, what they are, when they will be reported, and The fact that beginning in tax year 2023, the rate would be reduced to 4.5% from the current rate of 5% related to the conditions for fiscal year 2021. So here's a refresher on that. The Department of Revenue, with assistance from the State Budget Director's Office, is required to review the reduction conditions and report the findings by September the 5th. That's upcoming. We now, with the closeout of fiscal year 2022, we now have a second year of rate reduction conditions to evaluate. And both LRC staff and the executive branch staff have reviewed the conditions, and both sets of staff believe that the reduction conditions have been met for fiscal year 22. So you see the chart at the bottom, fiscal year 2021 to be reported by that 2 years to be reported by September the 5th, but 2021 will impact tax year 2023. And then the 2022 conditions will impact tax year 2024, or I should say may impact. And I say may because the language that was enacted in House Bill 8, House Bill 8 requires that the General Assembly must take action before that second year of rate reductions would occur. And so if the General Assembly takes action, the rate for 2024 will be 4% instead of the 4.5% that it is for 2023. A couple of other, or three other provisions that are related to income tax is the Internal Revenue Code was updated. This is something we do quite regularly because it keeps Kentucky statute in line with the federal statute and the administrative regulations that go along with the Internal Revenue Code. And so the Internal Revenue Code update was, the reference date was updated to the code in effect on December 31st, 2021, and that applies to taxable years beginning on or after January 1, 2022. So you update to December and then it applies to the next calendar year. There was a new tax credit that was created in House Bill 8. The Decontamination Tax Credit begins January 1, 2022, so the current year we're in, for any taxpayer making a qualifying expenditure at a decontamination property. And there is a definition for that. And this property, as it's identified, is the same property that currently qualifies for the Environmental Remediation Tax Credit that was established back in 2010. However, language is in this tax credit that says you can't get both. So you can take the environmental remediation or the decontamination tax credit. The new tax credit is refundable. It may be assigned to another taxpayer, and it has limitations based upon $30 million per qualifying decontamination property. And then once that credit is approved, then it is taken over a 4-year period. It can't exceed 25% of the total approved tax credit within a taxable year. The last thing is related to income tax is change in the thresholds for historic properties. The maximum income tax credit for certified rehabilitations allowed on an owner-occupied residential property was increased to $120,000, was previously $60,000. And then for the threshold for all other property was increased to $10 million. There was also language added to allow, this is a tax credit which can be transferred, and sometimes that credit is transferred to a financial institution. We were still hanging on to the bank franchise tax related to this tax credit, and so that language was also amended to reflect the change that financial institutions now pay the income tax instead of the bank franchise tax. Moving on to sales tax, we have 35 new services that will become taxable January 1 of 2024. And I've just highlighted 5 here on the screen. These are the ones who might result in the highest amount of receipts. And I'm often asked if businesses are taxed when a base expansion incomes, whether business inputs are taxed. And the answer I always give when we start that type of discussion is, well, it depends. And so Kentucky has what all other states that have a sales tax. We have a sale for resale certificate. And so let's assume that I'm a small marketing company with a big job and I don't have sufficient staff to complete an order from a customer of mine. So I might go over to another marketing company and ask for help related to this job. So now that we're going to be taxing marketing services, that other company and they would issue a resale certificate to me, and then tax would not be charged on the transaction between the two marketing companies. But then if my customer were a business they were purchasing marketing services to be used in their business, then that is the transaction that would be taxable. What I charge for the complete service provided by both marketing companies. But it's that sale for resale between these two marketing companies that allows that exemption to occur at the initial level and only tax to the end consumer. You can also see here cosmetic surgery. I've had several questions about that. That is a defined term which excludes those areas which might be medically necessary related to facial reconstruction or body defects. The other type of surgery is plastic surgery. So cosmetic surgery is taxable. Plastic surgery related to those reconditions and body defects, that would not be taxable. Also for testing services, that excludes medical, educational, or veterinary services. And something that's not on here that I'll just throw in, parking services excludes services at an educational institution. So you can see that there are some bright lines being drawn here that medically necessary services and educational related services would not be taxable. Some other provisions in sales tax that were within House Bill 8. We have expanded the definition of extended warranty to include items of real property. So if your home warranty included replacement of a roof, that is normally real property, which would not have been taxed. The extended warranty on that service would not have been taxed until House Bill 8 becomes effective January 1. So moving into the real property area, we have eliminated an exemption for admissions to historical sites. So January 1, those admissions will become taxable, as are other types of admissions today. There was a new exemption created for prescription and over-the-counter drugs related to any person regularly engaged in the business of farming, and those drugs being used in the treatment of cattle, sheep, goats, swine, poultry, ratites, llamas, all the livestock which currently have the other agricultural exemptions. And then finally, the current exemption for residential utilities was limited in that it is the residential utilities at your place of domicile that would be exempt. So for a person who owns 2 homes in Kentucky, maybe you have a lake house for vacation purposes, it would be at your place of domicile, your home, not your lake house property, where the residential utilities would be exempt. Moving on, we have some new taxes that were implemented. The first is the car rental and ride sharing tax. This is a general fund tax, so deposits will be made into the general fund. It begins January 1, 2023, and it's imposed for the privilege of providing a motor vehicle for sharing or for rent. It is based upon 6% of the gross receipts derived from peer-to-peer car sharing, from the rental of motor vehicles, for transportation network companies. For those of you who may not be familiar with that term, that's a Uber or Lyft, for taxi cab services, for limousine services. So any person who is either providing for rent or for sharing a motor vehicle in Kentucky. The next new tax is the electric vehicle power excise tax. This is a road fund tax, so deposited into the road fund, and it will begin 1 year later, January 1, 2024. The electric vehicle power must be distributed by an electric vehicle power dealer. So this is not you plugging in your car at your home. This is the refueling, the recharging of your vehicle while you're out on the road by a dealer. The initial base rate is $3 per kilowatt hour. There is a surtax that is also charged of 3 cents per kilowatt hour if the charging station is located on state property. This rate will be adjusted according to the National Highway Construction Cost Index 2.0, and that annual adjustment will begin 1 year after implementation on January 1, 2025. As that rate goes up, it cannot go up or down greater than 5%, and it cannot decrease below the base rate of the 3 cents per kilowatt hour. There is a staff study that is ongoing, and I'm going to give a shout out to Hope Rowlett, our grad fellow on A&R up here in the corner. She is researching all 50 states and the federal government and providing that information on a monthly basis. So look for the final report to come in December. You'll get month by month updates, and you'll see that listed on the reports that we receive. But the most important report will be the final one in December when we have all states collected at that point in time, plus the federal government. So the third tax, new tax, is the electric vehicle ownership fee. And this tax will be split between 50-50 between general fund and road fund. It begins 1 year later, like the EV power tax, on January 1, 2024, and it's imposed for the privilege of owning an electric vehicle. So you heard State Budget Director John Hicks say something about the sales tax on cars, the motor vehicle usage tax of 6%. That still stays. That remains the same. This is an additional tax or a fee for electric vehicles. And it's $120 for electric vehicles, $60 for electric motorcycles or hybrid vehicles, and it's paid at the same time as the annual registration. It's indexed in the same way that the EV power tax is indexed as well. So 3 new taxes related to vehicles. There is also a provision for tax amnesty within House Bill 5. It is a 60-day period beginning October 1 to November 29th of 2022, and the Finance Cabinet is to procure services to conduct the program. It's very similar to past amnesty programs where a taxpayer would come forward, file any delinquent returns, pay any outstanding tax that was due, and 1/2 of that interest. But the additional thing with this amnesty program is they're also required to pay any federal tax, penalties, fees, or interest that might be referred to the department for collection purposes. And if you're not aware, the Department of Revenue receives individual income tax is the primary source, but individual income tax notices of tax due from the federal government, and they primarily will try to collect that, and Revenue then sends the IRS the Kentucky income tax due. And these are final due and owing bills that they exchange and they collect for each other. So for the amnesty period, if the department has in their possession a referral from the IRS to collect a federal liability, that needs to be included within the amnesty program to be eligible for amnesty. That date is coming up, and I have not heard about an RFP yet. So there is a provision in House Bill 8 that says if a successful bid for procurement is not secured, then the department will implement a tax amnesty 1 year later during a similar 60-day period that next year. Finally, local taxes, the local transient room tax, some changes were made there to make the taxpayer and the taxable base conform to the sales and use tax statutory references, so that the same taxpayer who is paying sales tax on that room would also pay the statewide transient room tax and the local transient room tax. The same type of idea also occurred for the local car rental and ride-sharing license fees, so that what happens at the state level would also happen at the local level related to that type of license fee. I know that was pretty quick, but I'll be glad to answer any questions or go back over anything that needs more detail.
Jennifer, we appreciate your willingness to split that out over 2 meetings because of our short time that we had when we were in Covington. First up, we've got Senator Nemes.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just want to make a comment. I take issue with the wording tax imposed for the privilege of owning an electric vehicle. That is not so. It's a tax for the use of the roads that electric vehicle uses. I know the feds give like $17,000 off on purchasing an EV. So I just take issue with that wording, because we are not taxing people for a privilege to own something. We're taxing for the actual, and EVs do weigh almost twice as much as a regular car, and the gas combustion engines pay gas tax. So I take issue with that wording. Thank you.
If I may respond?
Yes.
That is statutory language. So I pulled that out of the statute.
Representative Nemes, did I see your hand?
Just real quickly, I wanted to just clarify, because I know there's some weary souls that watch this. And for those who saw that we're going to expand taxing on cosmetic surgery, I just wanted to be sure to mention that that's not cosmetic surgeries in connection with like breast cancer or some kind of a medical necessity. It's elected cosmetic surgeries. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
If it's medically necessary, then it would not be taxable.
Very well. Anything else? Well, if anyone's not seen Hope's report as of yet, it's a good piece of work. Hope, I apologize. I think it's my fault that you're having to put that together. But it is good work. And I would remind the members of this committee, we specifically put January 1st, 2024 in there to allow time for comment and input, as this is a very new thing. But as we expand electric vehicles and begin to see the reduction in reliance on the internal combustion engine, it's something we want to have in place and plenty of time to accommodate for that transition. So to the extent that there are people who have issue with that, they need to be bringing those things. We've given plenty of grace period for adjustments to be made as necessary. But at the end of this session, it will go into law come the following January, and we want it to be as right as humanly possible. So, Jenny, once again, thank you for splitting your testimony up into 2 meetings. We sincerely do appreciate that. In your packets today, you will find some follow-up information from Louisville Metro regarding their juvenile corrections facilities. Would encourage everybody to take a look at that. There is our normal correspondence from Jenny Bannister on interim allotment and emergency appropriation increases, and also some various reports we've received since July the 6th of 2022. Once again, to our friends from the University of Louisville and also from out of town, thank you very much for being here today and presenting on a very important subject. We will certainly look forward to some additional conversations moving forward. Any other business to come before the committee? Seeing none, we will stand adjourned.